Ji, Dr. Professor Niranjan Swarup sir. It is very difficult to introduce Chairman Construction Industry Development Council, Dr. P.F. Rana, as he has very wide uh, experience of the working. But in brief, let me share that he is alumnus of the IIT New Delhi, IIT Delhi, and completed his PhD from Newcastle upon Tyne University, United Kingdom. He is director of several very esteemed organizations and recipient of the national and international awards. Especially, I would like to mention the Rajiv Ratna National Gold Award for Best Chief Executive 2005. He was former chairman and managing director of the HUDCO. May I request sir to please address the academicians and other participants and extend your blessings, sir. Please, sir. सर सर आपका माइक म्यूट है सर सर
Yeah, welcome everybody. And today's we have a special lecture on trenchless technology. But just a few words. We started with the materials. I think, Professor, every local area, whether it was a stone availability or some type of tiles, whether it is clay tiles or even the various forms, they were all technologies used locally. And now, of course, we have to re-establish that those materials were good for the local areas and they are durable. So that part, I think we can take up some other time. But today, the new technology, because all our roads and our cities get dug up and all, so the trenchless technology, which was initiated, is picking up now. Cities are taking advantage of it, and but still, in many cities, we are going into the dug and cover process, and the soil keep overspilling even after the work is completed and hardly repaired. So I think instead of talking general, let us listen to Niranjan for the specific lecture of the day. Niranjan?
Sir, sir, I would also like to invite Director General Sir Dr. P.R. Swarup sir to give the brief on today's session and topic, because this is the third session of the AFLAP program, and it is based it is focused on the emerging technologies covering the subsurface construction. So, sir, may I request Dr. P.R. Swarup, Director General Construction Industry Development Council, to brief the program and the topic, sir. Sir, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mishra. And the only modification I would like to put in here is that we are talking about not the subsurface construction, we are talking about the subsurface infrastructure as it exists in the nation now. Right in my first and second and introductory lecture also, I told you very clearly that we are basically having an assembly of all branches of engineers here, and these are the kind of issues that we have to start looking at in case we really want to make our education very meaningful, research-based, where everybody is involved and they are actually working to get a solution for a particular problem. Now, briefly speaking, when you talk about the subsurface infrastructure, everybody thinks that it is all about laying the pipelines, but it is far beyond that. We have to understand that there are situations that have to be understood, and more than 10 specific branches of engineering will have to any solution that you have. You are principally talking about civil engineering, but let me tell you something, that civil engineering is possibly the smallest component in the whole thing. It's really the smallest component in the whole thing. So please do not mistake it with construction only. There is a plethora of issues that one has to start looking at it. You are talking principally about the mechanical engineering operations. You are talking about the radar applications. You are talking about the kind of X-rays that we make underneath the ground surface that we cannot see. You talk about the digital technology. You also talk about a lot of instrumentation. You talk about electrical engineering. And to top it all, you also require a lot of chemical engineering coming into it. So the entire solution only comes when you have plenty of branches coming together. And that is the purpose and the tone and tenor of this particular program. So please try to understand the whole thing. Today it's going to be a bit of an introduction because I am absolutely certain that many of you may not be familiar with it. So please try to look at it from both the angles, your own branch's perspective as well as from the general perspective, and how you can gel together. That is something that we have to start aiming at. And the questions and answers that you will be preparing for the final outcome are going to be based on this particular topic and theme, but encompass the kind of things that we need to do vis-a-vis our own branch of engineering, as well as the kind of other branches of engineering which are coming in the conglomeration for that matter. So listen to this lecture very, very carefully, because Professor Swaroop is the Director General of Indian Society for Trenchless Technology. And trenchless technology is the nomenclature that was given to the subsurface infrastructure development for a simple reason that the first thing that the founding fathers of this technology, and I remember some 25 or 30 years ago, the technology was actually being evolved in University of Rostock. And that was the time when Germany still had not merged together. We had two separate Germanys. One was basically the red Germany and one was blue Germany. And that is how it was. So Rostock happened to be in the eastern part of Germany, which was under the Russian control. And very interestingly, this technology was being developed. And my first encounter with this technology was then. So this is almost like it was kind of a revelation to us. And then I, along with late Mr. A.K. Sarkar, who happened to be the CMD of National Building Construction Corporation, we were instrumental in bringing in the country the whole concept. At IIT Delhi, we held the first concept. We never knew anything about it. It was just kind of a basic understanding that we have had. But then the life has traveled quite far, and India happens to be one of the front runners in practicing this particular technology. So please listen very carefully, and at the end of the day, do ask questions. Professor Swaroop is a very patient person, and he'll be very happy to answer all the questions that you have in case the time permits. And if the time doesn't permit, please send it on the mails. He will be more than happy to respond back to you. So I am now handing it back to Professor Swaroop, who will take on there, and he will have few slides to be shown to you, few projections to be shown to you, but then he is going to be doing a lot of talking also. So that is how the program will be. Thank you so much, Mr. Mishra, for introducing me to this program. I had made a commitment that I am going to be available in all the series, the entire series of this particular program, to make sure that we are getting onto the right track for that matter. So we'll continue with it. And now I hand it over to Professor Swaroop. Professor Swaroop, please take over.
Thank you, sir. Though I wanted to speak completely extempore, but then I thought that there should be some slides so that subsequently when my talk is over and all of you are sort of going through the discussions and creating your set of questions, you should have something to work on. And that presentation copy will be available with Mr. P.K. Mishra, who would share with all the registered participants. Do go through that presentation, do talk to me, do send the questions. And I will be very, very happy, as Dr. Swaroop explained, to answer to you and actually work with you in all the engineering colleges, all the institutions where the engineering is being taught. To begin with, let me initiate the presentation. How do you work your entire screen, a window? Present your entire screen. And
You have to go for a window.
I have to go for a window.
सर विंडो सेलेक्ट कर लीजिए.
So here we are sharing it. It is subsurface construction. Is my screen visible? Because I'm seeing the presentation itself. Mr. Ji, can you?
Now it is coming. Now it is clear, sir. Sir, please.
My screen is visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Now
sir.
it is
Visible,
visible.
sir.
Nice. The talk is titled Subsurface Construction. It's the FDP under ASLAP. And I'm Dr. Nilanjan Swaroop, Director General, Indian Society for Trenchless Technology, India. One basic line, underground space is the future of urban settlements. We need appropriate vision to preserve it for our future generations. We got it from our forefathers and we have to hand it over to our next generation. As engineering professionals, I believe it is our duty, our job to preserve it as best as possible and hand it over. And that is where I call for a partnership with all of you so that we are able to do it successfully. I will be talking on 6 different sections. That is the background, subsurface construction, trenchless technology, geoengineering consideration in the optimum use of underground space, city-specific subsurface utilities vision document, and then concluding remark. I am proposing a vision document where all of us work together for our respective cities so that we are able to provide some kind of direction to the industry, to our students, to everybody, all the people in the chain. So let's go to the background. Trenchless technology is the family of subsurface construction techniques that help in remotely constructing, maintaining, and replacing subsurface utilities buried below the ground surface without excavating continuous trenches. Trenchless, that is, less number of or less quantity of trenches. In the national context, trenchless techniques have an extremely important role, both during the construction as well as later, during the operations, maintenance, and replacement at the end of economic life. We are investing close to about $2 billion every year in subsurface infrastructure. 2 billion means we are talking about something around 1,50,000 crore rupees every year going down the ground. So as the urban area managers, the professionals are, it becomes imperative for the engineers to have sufficient internal capability for construction, operation, maintenance, and replacement of buried utilities, both conventionally as well as through trenchless methods. Through this capacity, the nation would be able to get subsurface utilities developed and managed efficiently and effectively. And that is what it will give the best ROI, return on investment, to the nation. Prerequisite to achieve this capacity is to have proper vision for the application of trenchless technology in the development, maintenance, management of subsurface utilities as post-construction management and maintenance of buried utilities through conventional modes may be challenging and impossible in certain situations. There is a common joke going around or moved around that the moment the municipal authority comes and builds the road, somebody will come and dig a trench to lay a cable or to lay a pipe. That is what is something which needs to be removed. And as an engineer, that is our business. How do we contain that? In this talk, we shall be looking at different aspects of subsurface construction and such vision attributes and modes to create such vision documents and put them to use in the nation building. And I invite you to work with us in that nation building process. Now, underground space is basically linked with the location and magnitude pressures. Wherever we have difficulty in working above the ground, we go below the ground. When we have to do the environmental protection, when we have to isolate something, the topography fixes it, or if there are barriers and we have to cross, all these require, or all these define or fix that we need to use underground space. And there are numerous issues where this application is essential. Now, what are the advantages of going underground? Time saving, reduction in the flow of private vehicular traffic and other things on the surface, reduced surface land consumption, more space for pedestrian, urban development issues, energy saving through mass transit, reduction in external costs, that is noise, pollution, congestion, all these put together. These are the
Sir,
basic.
sorry to disturb.
Sorry?
Niranjan, I'm sorry to disturb. Actually, I'm only able to see your first slide. Your slide is not changing, sir.
That is not changing?
No,
Okay,
sir.
hold on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sir, please move it in the slideshow, sir, so that it will be visible for us.
Yeah, I was in the slideshow only. Now is now second slide visible?
Yes, sir. Is
Yes,
it visible, sir?
Nice. So I'm rather than going into presentation mode, I'm just going on the normal display. So we were at the background. We concluded the background, I believe. Yeah. Here are the advantages I was on, and basically the point is that there are subsurface usage requirement where the engineers are needed. And how do I do it? Is the conventional construction methods, but then there are challenges to do it, and that is it encompasses surface disruption, damage to adjacent structures, cost and duration of work related to the above ground construction, increasing mechanization, making things very, very difficult. Cut and cover method versus bore tunneling or trenchless methods helps us. Imagine one thing, if you are building a city, you will be laying your utilities below the ground, maybe at a depth of 1.5 meter, 1.8 meter, 2 meters or whatever. But then when the next set of development takes place, what would happen? This space is already filled up. What you will do is you will go on laying your utilities at a lower depth, then at a lower depth, then at a lower depth. Younger your utilities would be, deeper they will be. And the moment they go on getting deeper, your challenges of excavating such deep trenches becomes high. And to avoid those challenges, the only option available to most of the engineers is going with the trenchless technology. And the moment I go with the trenchless technology, the same moment, it's not only the civil engineering, as Dr. Swaroop said, there are 10 different branches that come into play. Let's say this is the cut and cover process. You are having a trench and you are laying your utilities below the ground, but the underground space is heavily used. Traffic congestion is growing rapidly. The street pavement damages are there. Cost of surface restoration is increasing. Direct and indirect business losses do come in. So with these problems, you have much challenges for going for conventional construction methods below the ground. Now, what happens when you have constructed your utilities? Then what? Then there are issues with those utilities, as Dr. Swaroop said, that it is not merely laying a pipeline, laying a cable, or constructing a structure below the ground. It is also its maintenance, its survival, operation, and then finally its termination at the end of its economic life. But if our management process or operational process is not looking at that, we would be reaching here. This is a picture from Aurobindo Marg in New Delhi, where a major sewer line collapsed, and the moment it collapsed, the road also caved in. Would we appreciate these in our areas? Or these? Here, this is a photograph from Chennai, I believe, where a bus and a car went inside a pothole. Combined sewer overflow with the pandemic raging around, people getting sick, right, left, and center. Imagine if some infection is coming out of this overflow. What would it lead to? It would not be pandemic. It would again become epidemic. Or right, left, and center, we are building CNG pipelines across cities. There are so many projects. Almost most of the major cities have already been tendered, and the projects have started or have been almost completed in many cities where the CNG, that is the compressed natural gas, or PNG, piped natural gas, are being supplied to the consumers. Now those pipelines are buried below the ground, and this is a possibility if those pipelines rupture. Or these things, these are the effects of system failure. Are we up to it? Do we want that? And if we don't, what do we do? As an engineer, our business is to prevent this and maximize the output from the utilities that we have buried. So, primary question is, please decide, do we want our subsurface infrastructure built to last, or do we want continue repairing them? Logic is we have to go for built to last. And if it has to be built to last, there are many issues that have to be addressed. And as an engineer or as engineers, we need to see to it that those issues are handled properly. Okay. Now let's go to trenchless technology. Let me define trenchless technology first. It's a set of techniques for remote installation, rehabilitation, and repair of utilities, pipelines, and small tunnels, linked by their lack of need for digging continuous trenches for the installation of new structures or their repair. Mind it, it's all their repair. That is more important when we are talking about the assets what we have already built. Imagine if we are investing $2 billion every year, and let's say for the last 10 years, if that money has been going inside the ground, that means we have already invested $20 billion worth of money in the infrastructure. We need to contain failure of those or contain damages to those. And that is where role of professionals and academicians who guide those professionals comes in. And I invite you to be a part of this particular nation building or nation capacity containing initiative. Trenchless technology, as I indicated, comprises of 4 different portions. New installation, where you are creating a network. Replacement, where you are replacing the liner of the tunnel or liner of the pipeline, what you have there. Rehabilitating, where you are preventing deterioration of the constructed buried utilities, and you are actually seeing through the ground. So it is a completely different ball game compared to the normal survey activities, and that is where you have the sensors, that is where you have the radars coming into the picture. All those, when applied properly and adequately, will result into safe and successful projects. And that is where role of professionals, engineers does come in. Now, when I'm talking about new installation, what I mean to say is creating a cavity below the ground. That basically means I kind of shift the soil sideways, I cut the soil and pull it out, or I push the soil, and that is the way I create a cavity. And then while I've created a cavity, I also push in a pipe, or I place a pipe by pulling it back or whatever. There are several techniques for doing this particular activity. I have not included those techniques because those techniques you can view on YouTube, or we can have a longer discussion because this particular coverage would require maybe a day or two for explanations. But then the basis is that you create a cavity in the ground, you replace the liner of the cavity, that is, you burst it from the inside, you split it like this and place a new pipe, or you implode it, you take an equipment which basically crushes it and puts in. These are the 3 modes by which you replace the buried utilities without excavating continuous trenches. Similarly, rehabilitation, where you either go and plug the holes, or you insert a leakage-proof membrane, or you insert a load-bearing membrane, which basically prevents the deterioration of your pipeline. Because imagine all the pipes which are buried below main roads or highways or maybe expressways are subject to kind of loads which are crushing them. There's a dead load, there's a live load, then there is a fluid which is flowing through them, and that particular loading also damages the whole system. There's a caustic effect of your fluid which goes in. all those lead to the quality failure of a pipeline. We generally design our buried pipelines for a period of 20 years, but then unfortunately they are not surviving for those 20 years. Maybe, I mean, I should not put a number behind it, but then number is too short. There are techniques or trencher techniques which can help in bringing the economic life as long as 60 years. So depending on the requirement, the rehabilitation is done. Then comes the subsurface survey. It comprises of three parts: subsurface utility engineering processes. You see, we are talking about utilities buried below the ground. We can look at the utility at a location, at another location, or at another location, but we will never be able to know the utility distribution all across the ground. And if we are not able to know, how would we decide that the pipe or the cable or any structure is buried at X, Y, Z coordinate from this point? X, Y, Z, X1, Y1, G1 coordinate from this coordinate, this point. For that, there is a standard engineering process which is called subsurface utility engineering. It employs applying ground penetration radar. It applies using various protocols to identify the structures. It applies using vacuum excavators which kind of remove the soil, suck out the soil and expose the utilities. All those put together provides you a buried utility map. Imagine one thing: the building map, the area map or the plans that you see about the cities are very straightforward. They are Google images or they are maybe measured surfaces. But when we are talking about subsurface utility maps, the pipeline or the cable might not be going straight. It might be going like this and then coming to this point. If you check this point and this point, you'll know that it is just like this. It is a straight line like this, but then it might have traveled like this. So you require to run ground penetrating radar or other different pipe locating techniques. I am sure you are aware of those, or you must have known about it, or even in the master's program, many of these things are taught. My intent is to bring all these new installation, rehabilitation, replacement, basic understanding to the bachelor's level, to the diploma level. If I bring it to the bachelor's level, the boys and girls who graduate from your institution can go and actually serve the industry in utility development management processes. Because if we leave it to the master's program or PhD program, these boys would not be knowing anything, boys and girls would not be knowing anything. And end of the day, they would not be much efficient or effective as they could be. And that is where the academicians are needed. The academicians can instill that kind of confidence in my boys and girls so that a mere B.Tech or BE graduate can go and know what is the SUE, know what is SUE and apply that. Then comes geophysical investigation processes. All of you must be aware that the terra firma or the ground is not flat. The ground is undulating below the ground surface. And that basically means that there would be different type of strata when you are developing, maintaining, managing your utility networks. Your pipeline is there and the water table goes up. Your pipeline will float or it may puncture because of the pressure. So how do you evaluate that? For that, you need to have geophysical investigation processes. And then finally, pipeline conditions. The pipelines, when you build, they could be good. They may not be good even at that stage. The installation might be faulty, the material might be bad. There are many things, and that condition has to be known. So all that goes into subsurface survey. So these are the four different components of trenchless technology that we are talking about. Now, what are the implications of trenchless technology? Cost versus depth relationship. The deeper you go, your conventional construction becomes expensive, your trenchless becomes more efficient and effective. The utilities will occupy larger zones underground, and naturally, if they are occupying larger zones underground, going below the ground might be a challenge. Interference with the future large-scale underground structures. I was part of a project in in China, where there was one subway constructed or one tunnel was constructed, and below that another tunnel was, below that a tunnel would be constructed maybe 20 or 30 years later. What I found was what they did was that they laid the pre-stress or rather post-stress tunnel elements so that when the surface is excavated later, this tunnel should not sink. Those kind of approaches does come in when you're talking about trenchless technology, because you're talking about future development as well below your existing structure. The social cost, as I indicated, when you're excavating somebody's front yard, somebody's road, the shops, everything gets in a difficult situation. The traveling becomes challenging and all that. The changes of utility system to accommodate new methods. There are, for an example, if you look at the history of Delhi, the Delhi drainage system had been created in pieces. And at that time, the river was at some location and some connections were made. Ultimately, what was found that some levels of the drainage are higher, whereas the supplying drain lines are lower. All those had to be accommodated by using pumping system and all. All that comes into trenchless technology, or all that can be addressed in trenchless technology. Trenchless technology applications are remotely operated, smart construction processes that are extremely useful for creating, maintaining, and managing subsurface utilities without continuous excavations as we defined. Through this feature, surface and subsurface infrastructure destruction in urban areas can be avoided during construction. In addition, position, processes, and systems of these techniques help in creating correct as-built database of buried utilities, providing valuable inputs for future maintenance works of subsurface utilities. Imagine if you have laid a CNG or a PNG pipeline in a city and you do not know the exact coordinates of this line. Somebody comes with a drill, a directional drilling rig, and punctures a pipe, punctures this particular gas pipeline. The result is going to be damage to the existing pipeline and maybe several fire and damages to the structures. Death even. There have been such accidents. I'm pretty sure in Vizag, if I'm not missing it, in Delhi, in Mumbai, there have been such accidents, and engineers are needed to prevent that. And as academicians, we need you to create such engineers who can prevent those kind of accidents. So now I come to the engineering part of the whole business. Optimum use of underground space is the need of the community. It maximizes the benefits of the underground as developable space. The most optimum usage if we make, we'll have the other space or other unused space for other usage. Reinforce positive features of surface environment, effective use of geological settings, and plan and design for future use and sustainability. So if we are able to do this, we would be able to protect our subsurface and hand it over to our next generation. That is what is needed. So what is there we have to do? We have a 5-phase life cycle that starts with the planning and design, then goes to construction, inspection and maintenance, rehabilitation and renewal, replacement or removal. So all these 5 phases have their own parameters or linked issues. All this is available in the presentation which you will receive from Mr. Mishra. So you can look at that and you can get the basic logic behind it. I'm sure if you have any questions, you will be seeking the responses from me, and I'll be very, very pleased to respond to those. In totality, the engineering process is like defining the requirements, generating the alternate solutions, evaluate the alternatives, and selection of the most suitable solution. Detailed design, design promotion, that is explaining it to others, constructing and testing, performance evaluation, and conclusion reporting, that is providing the ABD, as-built drawings and as-built specifications to users. If those are available, future operation and maintenance can be handled. And believe you me, we need everybody. Any branch is needed here. few challenges. Let's say geological challenges, or geotechnical challenges. There is uncertainty below the ground. You may have a pocket of water, you may have a rock strata, you may have a buried utilities or buried structures. For an example, in Delhi, we had the city built and destroyed 7 times. What does this mean? It means that for each destruction, there are bound to be buried structures, like you will have wells, you will have walls, you will have different kind of things buried below the ground. And once you start excavating or doing the things, they would come in your passage or in your path. So what is going to happen? It will bring extreme amount of uncertainty. The conditions change. You assume that your strata is strong. There are projects, for example, in Kota, there was a tunnel to be made to bring water from a location to city, and it was done by a tunnel boring machine. The result was, or rather the situation was, that each meter had a different geology, and that different geology meant every time the change in the chemical of the, rather the tunneling chemical, change in the shield, change in the cutter appliances, all those had to be brought in. Appropriate expertise and timing is the essence. These processes are continuous. You do it and immediately you have to bring it back. If there is anything stopping your process, your movement will stop. For example, when you're drilling, your drill will go in the ground, go outside, catch a pipe and pull it back. Say for an example, if there is an object which comes in front of your drill head, what will happen? This will stop here and it will not move. And this basically means the strata will kind of start gripping this particular drill head, and if it grips, it stops. So it has to be run continuously so that it rotates and cuts. If you stop rotating, it will be stuck there. Then comes contractual sharing of risk. This is something where we need to educate our engineers, we need to educate the project owners, everybody, because what is happening is that if I'm not aware of anything, or if I have some fear of some particular mishappening, I would try to put it on somebody else. For an example, if you are not aware, when a tender document is prepared by the project owners, they would give a geotechnical information, but say that the geotechnical information is only for the information purpose. Contractor has to make sure or evaluate the surface himself and then bid his prices. Now, this is something where the contractual risk has been given to the contractor. But the contractor, if he is doing it, his prices will go up. If he is not doing it, he will end up taking a risk, and that risk may lead to failure of the project. As engineers, as professionals, we need to have this particular situation removed. And this is what would have to be developed by our academicians, in our students. Flexible funding for investigation. In geotechnical, investigations are the key, and people often avoid putting in money. And if they avoid putting in money, the result is bad investigation. Technology issues are there, that is, it's more in remote operation. Today, what is happening is that the projects, as long as there is one project declared in in Assam, which is about 4-kilometer long drilling. Imagine 4-kilometer long pole by which you are making a hole or you are creating a cavity. It will start rotating like this drill rod. How do you handle it? All this requires proper design and understanding mechanical structures as well as the electrical structures, because at that distance, how do you carry your pump, how do you carry your fluid, cutting fluid and all that comes into the play. Less direct observation of the ground conditions. Ground conditions are not visible. Life cycle approach to the design and management of underground structure is the primary need, and greater use of see-ahead technologies is there. Now, what I mean by see-ahead technologies, and here you come, or here comes your business as well. You have wearable helmets or wearable scanners which can see there. You have GIS, GPS communication systems which can tell you. You have this jacking pit here from which you are pushing a pipe. All this information has to reach somebody, and that information collection is through see-ahead technology. Obviously, all this is needed is some kind of the what we call sensor and wave transmission systems like this we are talking, sensors and data technologies. You have this manhole, you have this pipeline. This is for basically investigating the existing pipelines. They would be sending signals which will be received by this scanner here, either through the cable or through basic signals. Then you have walkover people who are sending signals down, which are hitting the object and getting reflected. Those reflections give the information about the buried utilities, and all those have to be applied. We have to educate our students accordingly in this manner. Now, what are the future trends? First is what is going to force us to go towards trenchal technology. Andhra Pradesh, I think Tirupati, you have substantial amount of urban flooding maybe going on today even. Mumbai, we have a situation where every year there are areas which are underwater. All those disasters need to be handled. One of the primary things is the failure of drainage networks there. And those failures need to be arrested. How do you do it? Those failures occur because the pipes have failed, the pipes have silted, things have gone settled inside the pipe, so the drainage is not taking place. And then finally the water is flooding out. Take for example, a city like Bangalore. Bangalore is situated in a plateau. You have, if you look at the complete geology of Bangalore, it's a raised area, and then you have a buried, sunken area within which the Bangalore is situated. Look at the situation like Guwahati. Guwahati, half the city is below the river Brahmaputra. So the moment there is any flooding, Brahmaputra overflows and half the city is flooded by that water. All that needs to be rectified. In Brahmaputra, I was required, or I was invited by the city authority there, and they asked me the solution. The final solution was that we had to create, or we proposed, I don't know where they have gone, but we had to create a drainage line about 8 kilometers long, going away from the city where the levels are lower from your Guwahati city. Operation and maintenance of existing infrastructure assets. As I said, we have invested substantial amount of money in our infrastructure, and those need to be operated and maintained so that they deliver proper services. We are making 100 smart cities, and their utilities, operation and management becomes a challenge, or is going to become Internet of Things information, and that has to be managed properly. Who does it? Our students. And that is where I ask you to come with me. City gas distribution networks. Everywhere, most of the cities are having gas distribution, or either getting created or maybe already created. They need to be protected. Enhance surface utility networks to cater for rising urban demands. Many people are moving from rural areas to urban areas, and that additional load is requiring more fluid, both supply and drainage. If you are supplying, let's say, 75 liters per head per day, and your population goes up by 20%, imagine the quantity which goes up. How do you do it? You have to go in for laying new pipe or more pipelines. And where from do you lay that? Because your area is already restricted. You have to go to trenchless technology. Major transportation and material transfer tunnels. As I indicated about this pipeline which is being built, there are actually 4 projects in Northeast. One is 4 kilometers long, another is 3 kilometers long, and the rest 2 are 2 kilometers each. And mind it, the cost of these projects, the 4 kilometer long project is about 250 crore rupees. It is a huge amount going inside the ground, and we need to have our engineers do it properly so that the assets are properly built. On international, don't only look at the Indian market. On international market, there are nations where our people go and work. Many of the people who are doing trenchless technology practice in India, they work here as well as they work overseas. Improvement and extension of more developed countries would be one future trend, or is trend happening. People are going and working in these, you can say, the advanced developed countries where the wages are extremely high. There are many people working in Europe, and US from India who are getting those kind of wages. Then there are nations which are behind us or which are less developed. There they go and create the basic infrastructure. There are numerous projects in Bangladesh, Thailand, or other places where Indians are going and working, Africa. All these provide opportunity to our students. Now, what is the impact on the engineering professional? Increased market for underground construction. Think about it. Construction per se means you are putting in any of these inputs and there's an increased market available. Increased imperative for professionals to be more involved in underground space use issues. New geo-related research and technology development opportunities are available, and obviously all these are quite useful for the academicians as well as the engineers working in the field. Now, where do I go from here? I have laid the basis of the basic of the technology applications. One thing which is badly needed and where our academicians can contribute is that look around you and see which city you live in. Can that city do better? Just like detailed project report or a city development plan, we have proposed to create city-specific subsurface utility vision document. That subsurface utility vision document basically is for a structured process for buried utility development, maintenance and management of city-specific subsurface utility vision document. As I explained about the New Delhi situation, there are places where the drainage line is at one level. There are other places where the drainage lines are at a lower level. Now, if I have a proper vision, I would create a complete city vision document, and that particular city vision document can be created if I am sitting with the urban local body as an academician and advising them. This document could be focused at the following aspects: planning, investigations, project operating procedures. This is what we can create. Subsurface utility information system. Most of the developed nations do have a call 101 or call systems where before digging you make a call and they will tell you where the buried utility is. This is one thing which you can get created in your city wherever you are living. Subsurface asset operation and maintenance systems, and finally asset termination and replacement systems covering the entire life cycle of the subsurface and infrastructure of the smart city. This process could be initiated by assessing the specific needs of trenchless techniques for all utility projects. This vision document would also help in identifying skill gaps in engineers and taking necessary rectification actions, both for your students as well as for the practicing engineers. Mind it, if you are sitting with the urban local body and that urban local body has a set of engineers who do not understand what is subsurface construction, it would be you who would be teaching them that look here, do this. And that would come out from your city vision document that we are proposing. This is a structure which I have given here. This structure can be seen when you receive this presentation, and this structure is a tentative structure that we have created for smart cities as well as for the cities which are planning to go for vision document. My suggestion would be that do go through them, and based on this input, please work with us, work with the urban local bodies, and work out the vision document. Now, what would be the input for the vision document creation? The inputs are our publications, other trenchless publications, inputs from us, our member network, which can guide you or which can assist you in getting that industry academia relationship so that you can create it, and then our training programs, other trenchless training programs. These should come as an input to you, and then we can collaboratively go and talk to conduct these training programs to the ULBs as well. Then we conduct an annual event called Nordic India Shows. So they provide you many inputs, and the next event, whenever it happens, you can join them, creating INDSTD chapters at your location so that you are able to interact and get better inputs both from the industry and both from the academic end through the proper networking. So with this, concluding my talk, trenchless technologies offer an effective tool for subsurface construction activities. Due to aging infrastructure and explosive demands, nation will need to develop and enhance its trenchless capacities. Trenchless capacity enhancement needs to address each type of stakeholders involved in the project delivery chain. We are working with each component, and right now I'm trying to work with the academics or academicians so that they create manpower essential for the development or delivery of trenchless projects. Engineering professionals are needed to be cultivated to serve this essential national need. Academic interventions coupled with industrial inputs are essence of this objective. And obviously, when I ask you to work with me, I also give you the industry to work with you. So both of you work together and come up with some kind of suggestive vision documents on which the ULBs start functioning. To initiate the actions at the grassroots, we need to create and implement city-specific subsurface vision documents. Engineering institutions need to become a part of this vision document creation process. That could be done through interacting with the local civic agencies or ULBs and providing them advisory assistances. Students could be deployed on the projects for the onward development of capabilities in them. For addressing technical capability gaps, such institutions could work with the INDSTT by establishing chapters at the institutional level. So with this, I would like to say, remember, nation needs to develop its internal capacity for successful subsurface construction project, and the vision documents could play a vital role. INDSTT provides a major platform for such activities and provides necessary knowledge for developing the vision. Underground is future. Let's maximize its potential for our future generations. These are the details of INDSTT. Do get in touch with us. We'll be very happy to work with you. Thank you very much. And that brings me to the end of the presentation. So, hope I was able to convey the concept.
Yes, sir.
The session is open now, and I would request to academicians to interact with Professor Dr. Niranjan Swarup sir related to the trenchless technology in the infrastructure. So please come forward, sir, and madam, to interact with sir, Dr. Professor Niranjan Swarup sir.
Sir, good afternoon, sir.
Yes, Professor Gandhi, tell me.
Sir, I'm Satish Gandhi from University College Nagarkoil from Tamil Nadu, Kanyakumari district. So, what the problem we are facing in that drinking water supply from the corporations, they are supplying the waters through the underground pipes a size of 1 inch. After some time, after 1 year or 2 years, the quantity of water delivered to the concerned respective houses will be reduced. Then we are spending a lot of money to rework the replacing the pipe, and we are spending a lot of money for reworking that as a customer. So what is the best solution for that, sir?
See, the thing is that failure of a 1 inch line could mean bad construction, could mean leaking lines, could mean deposition of silt in the pipeline, could mean obstruction by the third party. Okay, so all these 4 factors can come in because which will reduce the flow to the supplies. Now here comes the basic question that and generally I'm aware, or I'm pretty confident that your municipal corporation or your ULB doesn't have a proper vision document. If they don't have a vision document, what they do is a knee-jerk reaction. They would either say, okay, go and put your own pipe and take the water, or they may come and repair the pipe. This is something which has to be addressed from the corporation level, because see, I stay in Faridabad and the extent of hardness in my supplied water is too high. And that basically means we have to put in filters, we have to put in reverse osmosis system or other filtering systems. So that is something which we are faced. Now, bringing the engineering into it, I would like to create a system where these failures are not actually bothering the citizens. Could you get my point?
Yes, sir. Okay, sir. So we can prepare the vision document first for that.
It is something, see, you don't have to prepare yourself. You have to interact with the ULBs and tell them whichever ULB you are living in, whichever city you are living in, discuss with them just that you require a proper vision document, and
Okay, sir.
your institution along with INDSCT or your institution alone they make their so much money for maintenance this year. That particular approach is not very good, because if I had spent, let's say, 100 crore last year, that 100 crore might not fetch me the same quantity of work and material this year. And that basically means the quality of my work or the quality of my maintenance would go down. So this is something where, as an engineer or as a technocrat, we have to educate the ULB that look here, you have to go for a scientific process. This vision document will help them to create a proper budgeting system. And that budgeting system in turn will help them to develop, maintain and operate their utilities. It also helps us in educating and teaching our students who can then go and work on these projects anywhere in the world.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm
Yes,
Subra
Dr. Subra.
Banugopalan. I'm talking from Vidya Academy of Science and Technology. It's a college in Thrissur, and we do have a small city here, and we do have all the problems, especially regarding the groundwater interaction. Okay, I should say something like that, because we have monsoons almost. We have a long monsoon, and this time it is continuing. However, I was surprised that you didn't mention robotics, okay, because robotics seems to be a very important technology that can be utilized for at least some aspects that you talked about. So I felt that. So that is just a comment. But I would like to speak a little further. I would like to say that I'm an electrical engineer, and we are very fond of the ground. In fact, we ground everything. Okay, so perhaps this might be a problem for the subsurface infrastructure, because grounding everything means, of course, we are safer, but other provisions might be affected by that. Okay, now I come to the question. Okay, and the question is that I was thinking recently. Okay, especially after your talk, I feel that since electrical vehicle charging is going to come in a long way, in a big way, do we have space for setting up the stations below the ground? Okay, that is charging from below the ground. That would be adding to the entire problem. But at the same time, the infrastructure is there, the network is there. So perhaps it would be a good idea to give a project to students to experiment with such a situation. What do you say?
See, EV, when we are talking, I'll go with the robotics. Robotics, I deliberately did not say that because it makes things very glamorous, but fact of life is, without robots, you cannot work inside the pipelines. When we're talking buried pipelines, you would not send individuals inside the pipe. So obviously, robotics will go there. Our relining, our other processes, they require robots. Without robots, they don't function. Now, coming to the EV part. Now, EV means you are also laying extensive amount of cables which are transferring power to the charging location. And those cable laying is going to be a challenge, believe you me, because those cables have not been laid yet. They may be saying that we have infrastructure there, but fact of the life is that that particular process will require the horizontal directional drilling. They would be drilling below the road, and then pulling the cable in or pulling a pipe in which the cable will be installed. Obviously, they will require the DPR and other things, and your idea of putting the students on that job is marvelous. But you need to have proper guidance, and you need to provide them proper guidance that this is what is needed. And in case if the cables are already, I don't think cables will be late. Are they late?
No, the cables are not there. But in certain areas, we do have underground cables for one thing. Moreover, perhaps since we have to get to the place where the charging is happening, that's going to be a problem later on. Okay, because the charge might die off and the vehicle will be on the road. Okay, so why not have a plan for it, at least a plan? Okay, a vision document, as you say, such that perhaps a city can be networked in such a manner. Okay, a small city, we can start with a small city, and thereafter we can definitely go to a bigger city. What do you say? Because the grounding is good. Okay, the grounding is very nice for us, and because I think it saves some people at least. Okay, right?
Yeah.
Will you be able to talk to our students?
Yeah.
Is it possible for you to talk to our students? Yeah, one day.
My submission is that go for the vision document, each one, wherever you are looking, wherever you are living or wherever your institution is situated, please go for vision document. Maybe actually the idea is to go for a comprehensive vision document covering the water supply, drainage, the rainwater, the power, the electricity, the telecom, or oil and gas. All these 6 aspects should be covered in the vision document. But anyway, at least a beginning can be made. It will be a very good idea.
Yeah, I wish you will talk to my students because you're a good one. Can I invite you?
Professor. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Ma'am, I may also forward your request to Professor Niranjan Swarup to interact with your students and faculties.
Please, I did not have the courage to ask him, but now I'm getting the courage to ask all these great people to talk to my students, because that would be the way to go. Because of course we have ambitions, we have plans, etc. But then when students listen to you, I think then they feel that we are forcing them, but they won't feel so when you people talk. In fact, that was the feeling that I've been having in all the 3 sessions. That I wished so much that you're talking. In fact, I have started a trend wherein when the students coming into our college right in the first year, I start some projects with them. So I started this electrical vehicle charging, then again for sports technology, then again for agriculture, and in all sorts of areas. So I thought that, okay, when I talk to them, they say that, is it possible? Do you think that we will be able to do it, or something like that? And then when I force it down their throat, they feel that it is essentially my energy and not the nation's energy that is calling to them. Okay, so I suppose I spoke too much. Thank you. Thanks a lot. I hope you people will be able
Professor, Professor,
yeah.
I am very happy today, let me tell you. And we need more academicians and teachers like you. And never ever lack in courage to ask someone who is giving the knowledge to come and address your students or your faculty members and everybody. You are always free to ask for the knowledge and wisdom, and don't hesitate ever. Professor Swarup will come. As a matter of fact, I would also like to be there in your college to meet the students. As a matter of fact, tomorrow I am addressing about a couple of thousand students in one of the major institutes in the National Capital Region, and they are all eagerly waiting for me to come because they all want to have some kind of a direction, and we will be more than happy to do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. In fact, I should thank you. Yeah.
God bless you. God bless you.
Thanks, Rimensla. Thank you.
Anyone, any academician who would like to interact with Professor Niranjan Swarup, sir? So, sir, if there is no any question, could I close the session, sir.
As you wish.
Yes, sir.
No, but-
And our forum.
But
Sir.
I have a question.
Why?
I have a question. I have made a proposition to everybody that please join me in creating this vision document. I have not received any yes or no. Well, like the way that happens in parliament, people say aye and say no's. So how many ayes are there? Wow, I got 3 ayes, Dr. Gandhi, four, wow. Yes, Professor Sudha, you will receive the help, best possible help from all of us.
Come on, you teachers. You have to keep asking questions. You should be full of questions. I want at least 4 or 5 questions coming, and we'll be so happy to answer those.
Okay, the next question from my end, and that goes on the timeline. When are you planning to start the vision creation document? Creating the vision document?
All the professors, you always, and whenever you are teaching, you always keep expecting that your students shall be asking number of questions. Yes, Anu Rajesh, come on.
Good afternoon, all of you, sir. This is Sanuji Pillai from Shankaracharya Technical Campus, Bhilai, Chhattisgarh. So, as sir said that some documents, vision documents has to be made. I just want to tell you something regarding the same. That if we are involved for such sort of things, then we need a deep learning prior to do anything. Simply a 1 hour talk or 2 hour talk regarding this topic is not much satisfactory. I feel that personally, because in that case you won't be very much truthful towards that work what you are doing. A deep learning is very much necessary for any sort of activity. So I personally feel that a deep learning or a documental description regarding the same is necessary prior to do any work. Especially when we are teachers, we are somebody who have to learn first. Then only we will be able to deliver the knowledge to somebody else, or we will be assigned some task, or we will be able to do that 100% what to say justice to that particular work, whatever we are been assigned. And the other thing is that, sir, there was one question in my mind. Yesterday we had a meeting regarding the consistency of staff or consistency of students in our institution. So, owing to the new trends in computer science department, I'm from electrical engineering department, sir. So, owing to the new trend towards computer science department in many of the students these days, the management was asking that what are the techniques that we can implement for consistency of students in our department. So for that, what they suggested was to switch to some AI ML or some IoT based courses that you have to do from your end so that you can be sustainable in the wave. So, sir, personally, what I feel as an electrical engineer is that when I studied I did my engineering in around 2000. So at that time, what it was that nobody want to take admission in computer science branch. The branch was like that. It was considered non-tech branches. So the core branch was having more importance at that time. So in that case, if I choose to be in a core branch person, I wanted to study the core branch things, then why to switch to the computer science department just to flow for the wave? if somebody asks me to do some work or to gain knowledge regarding my knowledge area or my work area, I'll surely welcome the same. But if I have to do some software courses just to be in the wave, I personally feel pity about my branch actually. Because if I don't trust my branch or if I don't trust the area which I come from, then how come I'll be able to deliver this knowledge regarding the importance of my department to anybody else? I need I need a guidelines from you, sir. I need an advice from you that what I can do for
Okay.
this.
First question first. Uh, some great men sometimes said that the longest journey starts with the first step. All right. It is a cliched line. Very many people speak that, but I just recall that. You said that you need deep knowledge before creating any vision document. Yes, indeed, you need a deep knowledge. But then we need to start gaining that knowledge and then delivering that. This lab process itself is towards the kind of guided towards that direction. End of the day, we are solution providers. And if we are solution providers, we need to have the problems given to us. We need to know or we need to analyze them. In case if personally I cannot do it, I would use my network to help me. If my network is unable to do it, I will go to a larger network, global network, whatever is possible. That is the first logic behind initiating. But my mind is clear that I want to create a vision document. If I am ready to do that, then I'll find ways and means to do it. Okay, so that is my first response to the first point what you have made. Now coming to the second point, what you are saying, any branch of engineering does not per se remain that branch of engineering all its life. Say you are talking about a person who is a computer engineer. That computer engineer would be creating certain codes, would be creating certain programs to serve some other industry. They could be creating codes and programs to serve the computer industry itself. But in majority of the cases, it has to be the applied usage of the knowledge. Now, in case, let's say a computer engineer coming for this kind of vision document or thinking about this vision document, believe you me, there are in a city like Delhi, we have about 15,000 kilometer long pipelines buried below the ground. It is a huge data which is available for analysis. There are systems by which we send CCTV. The robots, what Dr. Sudha indicated, the CCTV robots go inside, take the pictures of the line. Now imagine a CCTV camera moving at a speed of 20 feet per second. That's the velocity in which the cameras are moved. Imagine the quantum of the video data which is available for to be analyzed and broken pipes have to be seen. Do you think it is a humanly possible job? No. It is job of a computer engineer who can go for AI, who can tell that look here, if this is the pattern, these locations could be faulty. If that AI process is built in this whole system, tomorrow I would know that the moment that my CCTV camera has gone in, within seconds I will get the response through AI. The ground penetrating radar which I was indicating. Now ground penetrating radar again is the process in which you have the radars moving on the surface of the ground. It sends signal below, it hits something and comes back. Now imagine if this velocity is different when we are talking about the air pocket, because that GPR cannot be, there will be some air pocket around that. So there will be different velocities, there will be different reactions. Now there are umpteen numbers of what do you call signatures. When you have something buried here, a wave comes and hits it and comes back. Wave comes and hits it and goes back. Wave comes and hits it, goes back. How it is measured? It is measured by the time spent from the moment the wave left this transducer, comes and hits it and reaches there. This velocity, this time will go on reducing, and you will get a parabola because of this transmission. Now, this parabola can reflect some kind of buried utility. Who will solve that? Some computer engineer. Ma'am, it is basically, please appreciate one thing. First of all, we need to decide one thing, that yes, we are here to provide practical solution. We are here to provide applied engineering. If we are here to provide basic code writing, if we are here to teach somebody C++, or we are here to teach Fortran or whatever, that basically will not give me a student who is ready to give me a solution for this CCTV reports, right? Your student can go and work for a utility company which is getting the CCTV reports. He has to work out the system, give a AI process. Maybe he can be capable to do that, or he may not be. But then at least we have to create this person so that things start moving in that direction. And if he is capable to deliver that, believe you me, he is a better employable person. Right, Professor Anu?
Yes. Yes.
I want you to feel confident. I want you to be very, very damn sure that yes, this is possible. If it is possible,
Yes, sir.
we can do everything.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sure. This is possible. Thank
If
you.
it is not
Thank you for
possible,
your answer. Thank you for your answer, sir.
yes. Okay, so my question was when, and I got one response, next week. So the next question is how? How would I go and start doing this if I were in your position? Anyway, I'll leave this to you. Think about it and let's try to work out something. Read the publications after forming a group. Okay.
You showed a few publications. I think yeah. So we can read them. Of course, nobody can read all the publications. So perhaps if we form a group, we can divide the publications and we can read. And so perhaps the ideas can be okay, what we call as brainstorming or something like that, subjected to that. And thereafter, we should approach the in our place is the municipality. And then let's see if we can get the lay of the ground or whatever.
Bottom line is, I think the step one should be receive this presentation which I have shown to you. That presentation will come from Mr. Mishra. Please go through that. Jot down your questions, jot down your points. You have my email ID there, so that can come to me or that can come to Mr. Mishra, who would share with me. And then we will kind of, we should go with an objective of creating this kind of movement across the nation. That is what is my bottom line or bottom submission. Based on that, let's move. So, any other points? I think, Mishra, now we should, since there are no comments coming in, no further comments from anybody?
If anyone wants to share his opinion, his or her opinion, then he or she may personally contact me, or he or she may send the question or feedback in the group ALFO, in the Faculty Development Program group ALFO. That is open to all. Sir, for now, may I close the session?
Yes, please.
Thanks, sir. Thanks to all. We will meet on the Monday. The schedule and the link will be shared on the Monday morning. Thanks to all.